Just look at all them majestic fighting types that we have on the front of the cover here. And Tyrantrum for reasons. I mean, he is a fighting type in the TCG, so it kind of makes sense, but still out of place to me. Hey guys, this is Gamer Cow. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. We're on Furious Fist this time, and it's about 115 or so cards in this set, but honestly, there's not that many which are super relevant. It's kind of a weird one. We've just had rotation, and we're on type theme sets at the moment. As you can obviously tell, Furious Fist is a fighting type set, and oh man, there's a lot of fighting type Pokemon in this one this time round, so that's kind of cool, I suppose. But yeah, there's maybe like a dozen cards which are truly insane, but those cards do kind of change a lot. It's a bit of a holding set before Phantom Forces though, let's be honest. There's a few promos that I kind of forgotten about before. Probably should have talked about these ones in the Flash Fire thing, because they were actually legal, although not for Worlds I don't think, because they came out in like October or something. So I don't know, it's a weird sort of time period for stuff there. No, these ones came out in June. This one came out in October. So this wouldn't have been legal, but these ones would have been. But they're really bad anyway. But just to quickly run through them, there's a third Charizard. For 2 energy, you get a Mega Charizard out of the deck, but you don't get to evolve into it, so you still have to give up another turn. So what the heck? It's just terrible. There's Chestnut does, I guess, a reasonable amount of damage if you can put a ton of energy on it, but it's still really pretty bad. Delphox does more damage if the opponent has energy in their hand, which is cool, but 4 energy is insane for that, and Psybeam doesn't auto-confuse even, so what is the point? Then Greninja, you could make an argument for this one if you're playing regular Greninja anyway, because it does do Snipe for 1 energy, that's kind of neat, but it takes a lot of energy otherwise to do Aqua Blast. It's not even that powerful, and yeah, just a bit lame for a 2-prizer to be honest. The last card is Trevor. Trevor, I guess you could play if you really wanted to. Search your deck for any Pokemon, so it's Master Ball, but on a supporter instead of an A-Spec. Never saw play. It's just not that strong of an effect, but I mean, flip heads every time on Pokeball, right? So I guess you could use it if you really wanted to. Let's talk about the stuff that actually matters from this set. Well, starting with the trainers, I suppose, and this one doesn't really matter, but it's kind of cool anyway, I suppose, because Patrat, you don't really see too much of it. Battle Reporter draws until you have the same number of cards in hand as the opponent. Most of the time the opponent's not going to have a very large hand though, so you're not going to draw very much, even if you can get your hand down, and you usually can't, so pretty poor card to be honest. Energy Switch gets a new cool artwork in the set, which is good. And then the fighting type support comes in with Fighting Stadium. This one lets any fighting Pokemon, including EXs by the way, any fighting Pokemon will do 20 more damage to the opponent's active EX. This apparently got errated because it could hit the bench or something as well, which was not intended. We do not need Snipe 50s on Landorus, thank you very much. But yeah, this means that any fighting type can just do another 20 extra damage here, and keep that 20 number in mind. It's going to stack up very quickly in this set. So yeah, an additional muscle band, pretty good. Focus Sash, for some reason, is a fighting specific tool, which is kind of annoying to be honest. If the fighting Pokemon this card is attached to has full HP and would be KO'd by damage from an opponent's attack, you are at 10 HP instead, and then you discard the Sash. So this is most useful for the Holutra in this set, but any time you are in danger of getting one-shot, this card is actually pretty insane. So yeah, really good stuff on this one. Obviously clashes a bit with Muscle Band, but there will be times where you just want to protect yourself from dying, because if you don't die, you don't give up a prize. And a lot of these fighting types are like single energy attackers as well, so Max Potion suddenly becomes pretty good with this too, and yeah, it's not bad at all. Fossil Researcher is for Amora and Tyrant specifically. We do still maintain the stupid fossil mechanic from Gen 5, so, you know, look at the bottom 7 of your deck, etc. for your fossil stuff here. So in order to get them into play easier, they made a supporter card to just search your deck for 2 in any combination of Amora and Tyrant. I don't think you would ever play them in the same deck, but you know, people can do what they want, I suppose. So, yeah, you can get 2 Omora or 2 Tyrant onto the bench, which is pretty useful because Tyrant is a decent enough attacker if you can get it charged, and Omora, like Aurorus, is a tanking thing, we'll see later on. Karina is also absolutely insane. Fighting type support is much bigger than the fire type support for whatever reason, but this supporter lets you search for a fighting Pokemon and an item card. So it can't get a supporter the same way that Skylar could for next turn, but any item is really powerful, and just getting a Pokemon search on top of that, yeah, it's Irider in the modern format, and Irider is absolutely insane. So yeah, my only gripe with this is that there's no like stage 2, which is really good to work with this, but beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. For some reason they reprinted maintenance from like the base set. I don't know why, but technically you could try and use this in like a bad debt version of Archie's Ace in the Hole or Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick later on, but we'll get to that as we go. Just don't play this card, it's terrible. Mountain Ring is a stadium that prevents any bench damage from happening, which is neat, I suppose. Damage counters do not count as putting damage down those, so you can still spread with Gourgeist if you want to, so that's kind of cool. Sparkling Robe is a new tool that protects from special conditions, so it's like Virizian's ability but on a tool instead of a grass energy requirement, so I guess that's cool. Super Scoop Up makes its return to the format. This was gone for 2014, but now it's here, which is nice. Tool Retriever is weird. You get to pick 2 tools from your Pokemon and just put them back into the hand. This could technically be useful next set with the Team Flare tools coming out to like stop your stuff from being debilitated, but yeah, it's pretty terrible. There's a reason to play it with Spirit Links coming out, but honestly, that's just miserable. Yeah, not a good card to play for that because it's just bricky, really, for no good benefit. And then Training Center is interesting. I wish they did more stuff like this, to be honest. The Stage 1 and Stage 2 Pokemon in play gain 30 extra HP. Now, Mega Evolutions are not Stage 1 Pokemon. They are evolutions, but they are not Stage 1, so they do not get a buff. Thankfully, we do not need to see like 260 HP Venusaur, thank you very much. But yeah, anyone still trying to play the evolution cards after the loss of like Heavy Ball and Level Ball and whatnot, you've got a bit of a bone here. Problem is it's a passive stadium, so if the opponent bounces it, then you just lose the HP buff. So yeah, kind of annoying, but you take what you can get, really. Then the 2 special energy in this set, because we're now getting type theme special energy as well. Don't worry, the fire one's going to come out later, but yeah, we have herbal energy for grass types. So the grass Pokemon this is attached to heals 30 when you attach it, but the catch with these special energies is that, unlike the Gen 8 versions, I believe they are, if you attach this to a non-grass Pokemon, then it gets discarded. In fact, you can't attach it to a non-grass Pokemon, but if it evolves, say the Breloom, if you go Shroomish evolve into a fighting type Breloom, then it discards the herbal energy. So yeah, heal 30, pretty solid, but grass tanking, never really the best strategy, I don't think. So yeah. But this is the one we care about. It's Furious Fists after all, and Strong Energy is busted. Strong Energy gives you plus 20 damage on the opponent's active. That's it, that's the joke. Yeah, we now have effectively plus 60 damage on EXs with just the tool, the stadium, and 1 energy. We can start hitting 90 damage hammerheads on the active EX. That's absolutely insane. So yeah, and it stacks. So if you get 2 strong energy on, you do plus 40. Gross stuff indeed. For the EXs and stuff, we'll talk about them as we get through the set, because they're most of the focus in this one, but let's talk about everything that's interesting in this set anyway. There's a Victory Bell if you wanted to play the Ninetales for whatever reason still, that I guess you could try and use with it. If you can somehow get this thing out and then get a grass energy attached to it, you can discard that grass energy to confuse and poison the opponent. So emulating Spore Prize, but on something that's continuous, so we don't have to worry about Devolution Spray having rotated. Yeah, it's a stage 2 though, so it's pretty miserable, but they're trying at the very least. Heracross EX is a little bit frail, especially considering it does damage to itself here, but it's only really a stepping stone anyway for the Mega Heracross, whose Big Bang Horn does 180 damage for 2 grass and a colorless. That's amazing, it one-shots all the non-Mega EXs and everything. What's the catch? Well, there's a big minus symbol next to it, and that has never been good for any viable Pokemon ever. This attack does 10 damage less for each damage counter on the Heracross. What is the point of having 220 HP if your free energy attack is going to delete its damage based on your tanking ability? I don't know. We lost Reuniclus, so we can't even like manipulate the damage for this either. So you have to max potion and lose all the energy, and then we can't accelerate it back. It's just, it's miserable. And then it's weak to fire, so Pyro beats it. That's usually what you would want to play a Mega for, is because it can beat Pyro. Just bleh. Terrible, terrible, terrible stuff. Excelgor can do 60 damage if it have 1 colorless energy if it evolves some Shelmet that turn. That's cute, but we don't have level balls, so it's kind of pointless now. Blaziken is somewhat interesting. There's a Magmortar, like Magmortar or Electivire as well, kind of tag team with each other here. Like if you can get enough energy on the Mortar, then Twin Burst does 160 if you've got Electivire as well. The Electivire, for the record, for 1 energy does 20, but 20 more for every energy that's on a Magmortar. So you can see what they're going for. Pile a bunch of energy on the Mortar. It can use Blacksmith, so there is that going for it. And then it's like either do 160 because you have an Electivire on the bench, or do more damage with the Fire because, you know, go against water types. Problem is most water types aren't lightning weak anymore. In fact, I don't think any water type in this generation is lightning weak. So yeah, there's not even good coverage on that at this point. It's kind of lame, but you know, it's trying, I suppose. If you've got the training center in play, like there's something you can make here. It's just like nowhere near good enough to actually see play. Same with the Blaziken, unfortunately. This is really cool with Blacksmith around, but it's just the support engine around it is just not going to work. 140 HP and 2 very familiar attacks here. Clutch for double colors does 50 and blocks retreat next turn, so that's cool. We've seen this on Blaziken before, it's been respectable enough. And then Burning Shot for 2 fire, 2 colors, so Blacksmith and DCE compatible. Discard 2 energy on this Pokemon, do 150 to one of the opponent's Pokemon. That's a huge number, but the problem is it's not big enough to take care of EXs and whatnot. And yes, you can snipe them, which is pretty cool, but you can't damage mod when the bench mons, so that's probably not going to work. If you hit the active with a Bangle, that is 180, or Laser Bank, something like that, but you're a stage 2 that requires Blacksmith, which is a supporter card, and you don't have a draw engine in there. I'm pretty sure Delphox Blaziken is not going to work, especially with the water type in this set that's really good. So yeah, not amazing. The whole Poliwag line is interesting because Politoed gives any non-Toad Poly 0 colorless in their attack costs, so it's kind of worth looking at what all the other ones do for the colorless stuff here. So the Poliwag will do 20 and Auto Confuse and Retreat Block next turn, so that's kind of neat. The Poliwhirl does 50, but if the opponent's active has any damage counters on it, it will do 100 instead, so that's a decent finishing blow. And the Poliwrath does 60 and 30 to one of the opponent's bench. All of those attacks are for triple colorless, but the Poliwrath has got an additional attack, Submission, for 2 water, 2 colorless. It will do 30 to itself, but it will do 130 damage as well. 130 is pretty respectable, and you could Protection Cube if you really wanted to block the self damage. That's fine. Like, it's a fun deck, and we have Celebi in format, so we could copy the previous form's attacks, so you could be in on Poliwrath and then use the Poliwhirl's attack instead if you need the extra damage. So, like, there's a cute deck that you can do there, but it's a lot of work, and Celebi's a 2-prizer, and Barf, really. I don't know. Glaceon's not amazing, but it is worth noting because of the Eevee in this set that we'll talk about first, actually, because Eevee kind of recontextualizes the plasma stuff as well. When you attach a basic energy from your hand to the Eevee, you can just evolve Eevee to something that matches that energy. This is actually something we've seen before, and the evolution comes from deck, so like if you draw it in the hand you can't evolve, which is a bit sad, but this is something we have seen on Eevee before. It has been on a coin flip in the past, which has been kind of annoying, but this one's automatic, so pretty great. It's not the last time we're going to see this either, but it means that you're like Jolteon, for example, you can Electrogun for beating Yveltals, you can just attach a lightning to that and evolve that way. And we might see that in the battle stuff actually, because Pepper did want to play the deck and I had kind of built it, so we'll see if that happens. But yeah, it recontextualizes the Glaceon here because for a single water, you do 30 and 10 to each of the opponent's bench. That's not a huge amount, but if you need to hit the water weakness, this is the 1 energy equivalent cost that you can play. So it's not the worst, but it is maybe too low impact at this point, but sometimes it's going to be okay. Seismitoad is not something I wanted to talk about here, but unfortunately we have to because it is a top meta threat. Thankfully Heavy Ball rotated, so we can't just search this out with its 3 energy retreat cost, but it's a 180 HP EX, and it's got Quaking Punch. For double colorless you do 30, and the opponent can't play items from their hand next turn. Yeah, it's a more easily accessible disconnect from like Manectric EX or Zebstrika. It's effectively deafened with 10 less damage from Dragonite EX, the Delta one, and like that was kind of annoying to play around, and it was on the stage too. This thing, yeah, it's dumb. A Grenade Hammer very rarely comes up if you actually build a Seismitoad deck. For 2 water on the colorless, you do 130 damage, pretty good for an EX, but it does 30 to 2 of your bench Pokemon. Play Mr. Mime if you're going to use this attack, because Mr. Mime actually blocks self-bench damage as well. So, yeah. It's irritating, and Quaking Punch is very devastating, because we are moving into a much more item-heavy format. Quite a lot of decks, actually, I've been building have had between like 17 and 20 items in them, and it's just kind of what you've got to do. And, yeah, this guy really messes with a lot of that stuff, and it's a pain. It is weak to grass, and the Plasma Leafeon finally has its time to shine because of that. Because it resists water, it can energy evolve if you play grass energy, and it does 20 for every energy the opponent has in play for 1 colorless. So it can be splashed into any deck that really has a hard time with this thing. And yeah, expect to see it played, because god, this thing is so dumb. Just frustrating. Just frustrating that it exists, because we have Garbodor as well, so it's like you can item and ability lock here, take you back to Gen 3, barf. Beartic is much more interesting though. 130 HP, 4 energy retreat is kind of huge, and kind of hurts if you go against an enemy Beartic, I suppose, because the main thing about this is Igloo Hold for double colorless. 20 plus 20 for each colorless in the opponent's active's retreat cost. Very much the same attack as what was on the Fortress, but it hits a much better weakness, because this hits water for a double colorless energy. Pyroar has a 2 energy retreat cost, so it will actually take 120 off of this without any damage mods, and that's enough to one-shot it. So Virizion Genesect decks were quite common with this, but any deck that has a hard time against Pyroar really, or Landorus CX for that matter, will like this card, because it's got a lot of HP, and yeah, Pyroar can't deal with it effectively, so it's solid. Aurorus is interesting, like I said, tanking version of the thing here. 130 HP, but it is on a restored stage 1, so yeah, that's kind of a given, right? Actually pretty low for what you'd hope for. but its ability sort of makes up for that. Any damage done by an opponent's attack to each of your water Pokemon that has any water energy on it is reduced by 20. This stacks per Aurorus, so if you get 2 or more out with the Fossil Researcher and then evolve both of them, that's going to be minus 40 that your water Pokemon have. Similar sort of thing to Virizion, but locked to water types. Yeah, you can make a tanking water deck, especially later on when Rough Seas comes in too. It's possible. Don't know if it's good, but it's there. What else is there? Dedenne is pretty good. It's 70 HP and both of its attacks cost 1 colorless, so you can play it in any deck. And that's valuable because Energy Short, the main attack here, does 20 for every energy that's on the opponent's active Pokemon. Yeah, put a Silver Bangle on this thing, and if the enemy Yveltal EX has got free energy left on it, it will just die in one hit. Yeah, this is really good against Yveltal, and it really makes them play a lot more conservatively with it until they know that you don't have Dedenne, or if they take care of said Dedenne. Entrainment's also good if you start with this thing. It's the same as the Call for Family on Emolga, so yeah, we can't attack going first anymore, but if you happen to go second, or, you know, the opponent just doesn't have that threatening an opening, you can start with this and get an energy on it and just go from there. It's for any deck, so yeah, it's solid enough. I've seen the Jinx played in a couple of decks. It's dumb, I wouldn't do it, but if it's on the bench, then you can heal 10 from your active Pokemon per Jinx. So I guess if you play enough of it, you could do a little bit of tanking, but really? I don't know. Sometimes that 10 is all it takes to put damage out of range though, so I guess. I don't know. The Hypno's also pretty funny because if the opponent's got a supporter card in their hand for 1 psychic energy, yeah, you see their hand, you choose a supporter, you discard that supporter, and you're the one who makes all the decisions for the supporter that gets played. They still get the benefits though, so it's obviously not amazing. But I suppose if there's a choice-based thing in the format, you know, that'd be kind of cool. What happens actually if you... I suppose if you get like a Pokemon search supporter, like Fan Club or whatever, you just get to see their deck as well. Because you have to be the one who makes the choice, right? That's kind of weird. Yeah, funny card, but doesn't really do anything too good. Gothitelle, if you play different stadium cards, can be kind of neat, I suppose. It discards the opponent's stadiums in play as well. But it's like, discard stadium in play and then get a different stadium from your discard pile. So, that's cool, but on a stage 2, not really. Machamp is interesting enough because it gives fighting Pokemon 20 more damage to the opponent's active per Machamp. So Karina can search for Machamp plus Rare Candy. That's the main, like Irida does this as well nowadays and will do so with the Baxcalibur in Paldea Evolved. So yeah, you can do a similar sort of thing with this. You did this with Inteleon all the time as well. And oh boy, it's pretty cool. But the problem is you're still playing a lot of clunk in the deck for one that ultimately doesn't need it. Fighting type decks can be kept pretty simple, and yeah, you don't really need to play this sort of thing in there. So it doesn't see play, unfortunately, but it could be pretty neat at times. Moving on to the, most of this stuff unfortunately not great because the Hitmons never really do anything super good here. Although the Hitmontop's artwork is pretty slick. Kicking against the Electabuzz is neat. Breloom again looks cool, not very good though. Neither is the Hariyama, although Thick Fat is an interesting ability, you just don't do anything really afterwards, which is kind of annoying. And then we have Lucario EX, which is the first free attack Pokemon we've had in a while, and we don't get these nowadays, it's kind of annoying, but you know, it is what it is. 180 HP, Psychic weak, so different weakness for the fighting deck, very nice. Fighting decks do have a decent bit of tank to them as well, because we have Landorus on 180 HP as well. Only 2 energy retreat on this one, that might matter. Don't think you're retreating this too often, but sometimes it'll come up. And what does its attacks do? For 1 fighting, 30 damage not affected by resistance. Pretty solid if you use, again, the Strong Energy, Muscle Band, and Fighting Stadium. That hits up to 90 on EXs, and not being affected by resistance means you 2-shot Yveltal as well. So that's pretty good. Corkscrew Smash for 2 fighting is the main attack you're going to see used in the mid game here. 60, and you may draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. You don't have to, however, so you can use this attack even without many cards left in deck. It's totally fine. Very strong attack. Obviously 60 with the mods, I mean 2 fighting energy means 2 strong energy potentially, so you can hit 100, 120, 140 with this sort of thing, getting up there pretty handily. And then Somersault Kick, a little underwhelming as the final hit, but 3 fighting energy, 100 damage, that's okay. If you are somehow able to get enough strong energy on this thing, you can go ahead and get one-shot numbers with this. And yeah, like 2 strong Fighting Stadium Muscle Band is 180, or 3 strong and one of the other 2 mods. It's not going to happen very often, but you can get there, and unlike Landorus, you do not have to discard any energy to do the stuff here. So yeah, it's not a lot more damage than it, but it can draw cards, it's got a different weakness, it's not affected by resistance on the first attack, which is important. You do give up the snipe damage, but you know, good trade-off I think. And yeah, less retreat cost, and the capability to go to Mega Lucario as well. Yeah, this card is awkward because no Spirit Link until the end of the era, but it's kinda strong. You go up to 220 HP and you lose your versatility of attacks, but you do get Rising Fist. For 3 fighting energy, you now do 140 damage, and if you somehow don't KO them, you discard an energy from their active. Cool. You are mostly one-hit KO with this though. Rising Fist has the advantage of being able to only use like 2 damage mods, so 1 strong energy and a muscle band is even enough to get 180 on EXs, so yeah, and it's an evolution of course, so it gets through Pyro, which otherwise fighting decks will have a fair bit of a hard time against. It's a decent card, you just lose the versatility and a turn in order to evolve to it, but if you position yourself correctly, not too bad. Mienshao is pretty interesting. It's only 90 HP, but unfortunately we lost level balls, so that's not great. But for 1 fighting energy, you do 40 and return this card and all cards attached to it to the hand. We don't have the plus power benefit like we used to do with stuff like Yuxi and Shuppet doing this, but it still keeps stuff like Muscle Band safe, it keeps a strong energy safe, etc. So that's kind of cool. DC 40 I guess could be used in other decks as well, but I think the damage output's too low at that point for a stage 1, especially one that dies that easily. Basically just, what's his face, Donphan kind of outclasses this though, for the most part, but Mienshao is at least cheaper in terms of the retreat cost and whatnot if it comes down to it, so yeah, it's a lighter thing, but it also gets messed up by N, which is played by every deck, so yeah, I don't know about that. Landorus is super good here. 120 HP, 1 retreat, and Shadow Power is probably way better than the Abundant Harvest that we had before, and I really liked that card. 20 damage for 1 fighting energy, attach a basic energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. Fighting types get acceleration. Cannot stress enough how ridiculous that is. It's of course any type, so if you did play like a dual color deck you could technically do some stuff with it, but realistically this is a fighting type accelerant. It only does 20 damage, whereas the Yveltal does 30, so that can matter, but if you put a strong energy and a muscle band on this, you're doing like 60 and accelerating, so there is plenty of scope to do some crazy stuff with this. If you power up Sky Lariat, it's not the best payoff, but 2 fighting and colors to do 90, that can matter with all the damage mods you can stack, but I think the best you can do with that, realistically, 2 strong energy, so you could maybe hit 170, unlikely, but Sky Lariat does one-shot any fighting weak EX though, so there's some merits to it, but mostly Shadow Power is what you're going to see from this thing. Fighting types do not stop there though, because there are still a couple that are noteworthy. Tyrantrum is a humongous 150 HP dude, but it is a fossil evolution, so you've got to keep that in mind. However, it's possible because of Tyrant being, you know, fossil researched into play. It's like possible to get it out, so that's something. For 1 fighting and 2 colors you do 60, but if the opponent has a special energy attached you do 150. Whew, That's really, really powerful. Like 150 damage mods here can happen as well. It's a fighting type, so you don't even have to play the Bangle side. You know, strong energy, double colorless, and then get your fighting stadium, and that is 190. It's possible to KO basically everything with this if you really want to. Giga Impact for 2 fighting and 2 colorless does that same 150, but Tyrantrum can't attack next turn, so you gotta kind of work around that. But you could play Floatstone because you don't have to play Muscle Band on the same. So yeah, scary, just very hard to maintain, and that's the problem here. Unlike Hawlucha, which is very easy to maintain, 70 HP, lightning weak instead of the usual grass, water, or psychic, so a little bit of a different thing to hit, and fighting resistant is actually kind of nice as well. Hawlucha's own attacks are not affected by weakness and resistance, so that's neat, I guess, if you go against Yveltal EX, and you do have to go against EXs because Flying Press does nothing to non-EXs. But when you hit one, it's 1 fighting energy, 60 damage. Damage mods once again can come in. This can get up to 120 for a single energy, which is absolutely insane. It doesn't hit for weakness though, which is kind of annoying, but it's mostly only against Darkrai. And I guess if you play this with Garbodor, you could technically make that not happen, and some fighting decks do play Garb, so there is that. It's a 0 retreat pivot, it works very well with Focus Sash to get 2 hits in, and it's resistant to other fighting decks, so if you start this against an enemy fighting deck using Landorus or something, you're going to take a lot less damage with it. Very, very nice card. Unfortunately, the EX is not as good because it's a 130 HP EX. No. Counter attack works with tanking, and this card can't do that. If it gets damaged whilst active, you put 2 damage counters on the attacker, so cool. Moonsault Stomp will do 100 damage if there's a stadium in play, but it takes a fighting and a double colorless to do that. 60 if there's no stadium in play, so yeah, pretty poor output. Fighting stadium does make it quite strong, but it takes free energy on a 130 HP 2 prizer, so we're gonna hard pass on that one. I don't think any of the Dark and Fairy... there's barely any Dark and Fairy types, but any of that matters too much. The Sylveon, I guess, because of the Eevee we could talk about here. 30 damage for a Fairy energy, and you move an energy from the opponent's active to one of their bench. Could be pretty disruptive, I suppose, but 30 is just not strong enough to impact any of the dragons, so yeah. And then Klefki makes your fighting... your, like, Dark Resist on the Fairy types minus 40 instead of 20. So if you want to win more against Dark types, I guess you could do that, but 60 HP, dude, just no. Fairies don't get a different resist ever, so yeah, pretty bad. Then we have Dragonite. I think this is the last of the main cards that are worth noting here. We'll talk about Nanoiva just because it's annoying, but Dragonite is something we're going to see from Sai today because it is actually a very nice card. 180 HP, 3 energy retreat, but we lost Heavy Ball, so sad on that one. But it's both its attack and its ability are kind of nice here. The ability Bust In lets you force it into the active when you play it to the bench, and when you do that, you can move any basic energy from your Pokemon that you like onto the Dragonite. I think you have to actually move at least one in order to force it into the active with the way this is worded, so that's fine, but I mean that rarely comes up anyway, that you would want to just push this in with 0 energy in play, because you need 2 grass and a lightning to do Jet Sonic here. 80 damage only, which is not a lot, but if you discard an energy on this thing, it does 120 instead. It's 2 grass, so it mainly plays with Virizion EX, and Virizion EX protects it from special conditions as well, so it makes it a lot harder to KO with Laser Bank and stuff not being possible, so that's neat. And yeah, if you just bring another Dragonite in after one takes a hit, you can force it into the active, the other one can then get scooped up, or something equivalent, I suppose. I don't think you play Max Potion, because then you've got to get energy manually attached. So Super Scoop Up and Scoop Up Cyclone, and next set AZ would be the main ways that you just pick it up again, and it actually is pretty cool. So yeah, fun deck with that. There's a Flygon in here as well that's neat, but you need a bunch of energy and have Professor's Letter, I suppose. but it's not a fighting type, so you can't use, what's his face, Karina to help out with getting like candy and whatnot. If this was a fighting type, I'd maybe consider it, because Rainbow Shower is pretty cool. Like, attach as many basic energy from your hand to your Pokemon in any way that you like is awesome, and we have Surge 2 basic energy on an item. So you play like 3 or 4 letter, a bunch of basic energy, and Karina can go Red Candy Flygon, that'd be great. But it's a dragon type, so you can't actually do that. And then finally, on the dragon note, there is Noivern. 100 HP, echolocation is the same as Smooth Coat from the old Cinccino, and way back in the day actually with Jumpluff and whatnot. If any damage is done to this Pokemon by any attack, flip a coin, if heads prevent that damage. Actually also works against self-damage on earthquakes and stuff as well, very funny. And Boom Burst, a bit expensive at the moment, but Psychic, Dark, and Colorless, you do 30 to each of the opponent's Pokemon. When we get Double Dragon energy, this could be considered, but there are going to be better targets for Double Dragon, so yeah. And that's pretty much it. It's a small set, but it does, I guess it does have a lot that's worth talking about, even if half of it's not really going to see that much play. Like, you know, Beartic is good for countering Pyro, Seismitoad is disgusting, every single fighting thing in here basically just screams play me, and the Dene is good if you are struggling against Yveltal. So yeah, trainer cards not as impactful as some of the sets we've had, but we do get Super Scoop Up back, which is good, and again, fighting support in this set with the trainers is absolutely nutters. So yeah, fun set. We'll be seeing a lot of fighting type stuff in this one for sure, because I know at least I'm going to play a decent bit of it, and yeah, a few cards I've been waiting a long time to play get good now, so we'll see how it goes. Thank you very much for watching, hopefully you found this interesting, and until next time, take care.